items specifically regarding propane production and the trends that are impacting propane supply. With this presentation on production and propane supply trends, I really wanted to break it down into 3 different segments. We'll just take an overview of what the propane supply looks like right now. We're going to have a brief discussion about propane exports and why that's important. And then we're going to take these things and see what the implications are for the autogas market here in North America. So starting out, we have a lot of information that we put together for clients, and a lot of this is all public. You are all probably familiar with what comes out on a weekly basis from the EIA report every Wednesday, and then they do monthly reports as well. The question that I'm always asked from different industries, is there enough propane? This table is something we've been keeping for 15 plus years, and it looks at the weekly data that comes out from the EIA. We average it by quarter, and what you can see is that from 2010 forward, it's been a very steady and consistent increase in propane production. We've actually had a doubling of production from 2010 through 2020, and the question becomes, are we set to double for the next decade? I think there's a very good case to be made for that, but I'm also an individual that I like to see things in a more graphical format. And so I'd like to just show you this graph viewpoint to get another snapshot of what's taking place on the propane supply side. Propane supply actually supports all of our exports. And we are going to look at this on our table and then graphical format. But one thing we wanted to show through this is that propane exports have seen a rapid increase from 2015 onward. We could even go to 13 or 14. You'll see some colors on the screen there. The yellow shows the rapid growth on an annual basis in exports. But you'll see that we've got these green color from February of 2022 all the way through January of 24. That exports account for 70% of the U.S. overall production. Propane exports are a dominant part of the propane supply. And one of the other very important aspects of propane exports is that if you look at it over time, they go out on a 1-to-1 ratio. With the propane supply increasing and exports consuming most of that, there's still a fundamental question of why is that actually happening and taking place. In this graph, what we are showing through all of this data from 2014 to 2023 is that U.S. North American propane is essentially the cheapest value on the globe. These lines represent the price difference between 2 major points in the globe. The red line represents the difference between Far East Asia and U.S. via Bellevue, and the blue line represents Northwest Europe propane prices and Bellevue here in the U.S. Throughout this whole decade of time frame, we've only had a handful of times where Northwest Europe prices have equaled U.S. prices. And we've had no times when Far East prices have come down and matched what's in the U.S. So from a pure economic standpoint, there is more incentive for a producer, a midstream firm, to go ahead and grab propane and send it into the international markets because there's more value on that than in the U.S. So that's why propane exports have become and will continue to be very important for the future. So right now I want to look at what some of the implications are for the autogas market, and this should not have been in transitions, but we'll go through it. First one, really simple. We do not see any concern for supply of propane here within the domestic US and Canada and into Mexico. There's enough. Globally, propane values within the US and Canada are the cheapest values in the globe. And the third implication is that traditionally, now this is not always the case, but traditionally some of the autogas demand that occurs is much more similar to the export market and to the producer market than it is to the traditional home heat side, which makes it more attractive as a domestic demand segment. So with those 3 implications on there, I want to quickly move into some of the advantages that we see for the autogas market. And hopefully you can see this on the screen there. This is a very small table that we put with every report that we put out on a daily basis. And it's meant to be highly simplified. What it shows is the difference between wholesale gasoline and wholesale diesel heating oil and propane at two different hubs in the US. Even if we were to adjust for fuel equivalency, propane continues to be the more cost-effective fuel on a per-gallon basis versus traditional gasoline and diesel distillate fuels. So that's a clear advantage that has in the autogas market. The other item that I wanted to look at the supply question, because I had stated earlier, we don't have a concern on supply. I wanted to take two regional examples and work through that. And I'm based on what Ronnie told me, I'm assuming there are some individuals both from Florida and from Michigan in the audience. So I took those two states as possible examples. Taking Michigan, if you're in that state, you are aware that's been a new pipeline that's been in operation. Over the last 5 years, we've seen new rail terminals and or transloaded facilities that have popped up in Lansing, Grand Rapids, Bay City, Flint, Cadillac, Traverse City area. That is in addition to truck terminals on the eastern side and on the western side. So there's a lot of possibility of receiving product. And the other thing that's happening on there from two supply items, we're seeing more Western Canadian Y-grade and mix coming into the Sarnia market, which is immediately across the border from the state of Michigan. That feeds directly into a lot of the Eastern Michigan market areas. And the last supply item there that we see coming in the future is more supply even coming out of Chicago due to producers in Alberta looking to send product down the Alliance pipeline into fractionation capacities in Chicago. If we move to Florida, I know there's not technically a pipeline terminal in Florida, but we classify that as part of the Southeast, and we say the Dixie pipeline is one of the safest regions in the US right now. And the reason for that has been the growth of Marcus Hook in Philadelphia and rail terminals that are peppered throughout Virginia and North Carolina that really do a good job of preventing those individuals in the Northeast from moving all the way to the north end of the pipeline. What this does is it makes it available for Florida from truck standpoint, from the Alma, Albany. It also, we've seen an increase in the number of rail terminals in that state. And whether it is appreciated or not, liked or not, you still have a supply of last resort, AKA the Tampa facility right there. Through all of this, what we're seeing is supply availability. There may not be the price that everyone appreciates or likes, the product is there and available. One of the greatest challenges we see with this item is if there is enough transportation capacity at the time you need it. And sorry, if you see me looking down, I know I've got people after me, so I want to make sure I hit my time frame on here. The other advantage we see for autogas market is when I say less price volatility, there's a clear opportunity for a marketer of autogas to offer their consumers or their purchasers a price stability. There's an active forward price market, and right now, the way the price market is going down in the future, it allows an opportunity for you to sell a product that is flat to maybe slightly decreasing and giving a benefit to your consumer out there. With those advantages for the autogas, we also see three challenges. And some of you may agree, some of you may not agree, but we see a temptation for a race to the bottom in absolute price. Trying to take this to be a product that is priced at the cheapest value, and which then moves into the standard convenience store type of model, low fuel margins, and the margins are made on the products in the store. Right now, we would challenge there's an opportunity to make a reasonable margin on the autogas and to avoid those two items. The last challenge that we see is common not just in the autogas, but in a broader sense, forgetting that North American market is very closely tied to what happens internationally and not as tied to what happens in domestic markets. Case in point, I showed you my window. It's snowing, it's cold. You go back 20 years and people would have said, well, it's snowing and cold, prices should be going up. Multiple times over the last 5 to 7 years, when it has been cold in the US, we've seen prices decrease. So that's a function of international, not the US, North American markets. How would I summarize all this right now? These 3 major points. Propane production has been, and we see it continue to be strong into the future. We think that the autogas market has a better supply picture and also matches better with what's happening on the export market. So that makes it a prime candidate for growth within the US. We also see the capability or the opportunity to be more competitive than several other fuels and to provide pricing structures that are more advantageous for your consumers out there. There's obviously a lot more that goes into this. This is a high-level overview, and I'm right at the end of my time right now, so I wanted to put this out there and say if you have questions or any other items, please let me know. We enjoy serving firms from all over this continent, and thank you, Ronnie and team, for the opportunity.